So my wife and I are camping for 2 weeks in Kouchibouguac National Park in New Brunswick, Canada. And I thought I'd show you what I brought along for cutting tools and my sharpening system. If you're interested in seeing what I brought, stay tuned. Okay, so I thought what I'd do is I'd start with my larger cutting tools, my axe and hatchet to start with. Now, bear in mind, we are car camping in a national park. So by virtue of car camping, we can carry, or I can carry, some heavier items than I would if I was backpacking. So I've chose to take a number of tools rather than just one or two tools that give me options while I'm here. The other part is we're in a national park, so I'm very limited with what I can do. I cannot cut down trees or even trim trees or even collect up dead wood off of the ground. So I'm limited to working with the firewood that I buy at the park entrance. And the firewood is kiln-dried hardwood. And let me tell you, if you've never tried to carve kiln-dried hardwood, it might as well be fire-hardened steel because it can be some of the hardest things to chop. Burns beautifully, but it's very hard to carve or use with. So I have found that of all the tools I brought, there's only a couple that I've been using on a regular basis. So to start with, the axe that I chose to bring this time is my Fiskars 24-inch chopping axe, and I do have a splitting version of this, but I find that that's not necessary. So the Fiskars 24. Now I do have other axes, but I wanted to bring this one this time for a couple of reasons. One, its length, and two, its head weight. It's not like a traditional wooden axe in that the total weight is combined with the wood handled axe, where the total weight is combined. What you find with the Fiskars is that they're very, very head heavy compared to traditional axes. That means great chopping power and great speed, but it does make them a little awkward for doing finer chores such as carving. So you will notice with the axe, what I have is I've wrapped around the handle just a little bit of inner tube, and my intention with that was to be able to have something to grip onto while I was doing finer chopping if I wanted to do some carving with this axe. I find I can do it with the axe, but it's a little awkward because of its length and its weight. It doesn't seem to have the counterbalance that a handle normally would. I've also put a little bit of the inner tube right at the foot of the axe as well. It just provides a little bit more grip when I'm swinging. May not have needed it, but I just like the extra purchase it gives me. So it's interesting, I won't do a review of the axe at this time, but just a couple of observations. Fiskars, by virtue of their design, have quite a thick grind. So even though this is a chopping axe, it splits extremely well. It's a nice compromise between a chopping axe and a splitting axe. It probably splits better than most of my traditional axes does because of the shape of this. And because the secondary grind is a zero grind, it penetrates very deeply. Now, they also have a coating. It's like a Teflon coating on the outside of the blade. And while that is protective, it's also a bit of a nuisance in that the blade, while it will slip into wood very easily, it will slip back out under the pressure of the wood itself. So if you don't get a full split on your first swing, lifting the axe up, hoping to take the piece of wood with it to bring it down on the block, this usually slides right out again. But that's only a small learning curve for an axe like this. I think if you're interested, at a future time, I'll do a more thorough review of my Fiskars axes. To be the short of it is, great value for the money. They don't look traditional, but they function very well. All right, we'll put that aside. Homemade mask for it. I'll show you that at a later time as well. My other small cutting tool in that same category is my Wetterlings, my SA Wetterlings hatchet. And this is something I picked up at a second-hand store for a ridiculously cheap price. And it's been a fine little hatchet for taking on trekking, and it works as great as a carving hatchet. It holds an edge well. It's really a nice little hatchet. I haven't used it. I just haven't found the need for it here in the park. I might have, except for another cutting tool I'll show you in a minute. So my Wetterlings, put that aside. My intent when I left home was my primary cutting tool was going to be my XXX Forester 2. And this is a wonderful handmade knife made by Derek Tappan at XXX Knives here in Nova Scotia. And it's made of 4mm thick L6 steel, which takes and holds an edge extremely well. It has a zero grind on it, and this has the roasted curly maple handles on it as well. What a great knife, and it's been my preferred knife a lot of the time. It's great for carving. It's great for most camp chores that you want a bushcraft knife, and this was designed to be a bushcraft knife. And I have a separate review on my channel if you're interested in looking at that. But that was intended to be my primary knife, but I haven't used it. And now I'll show you why. Let me put that away. This has been one of the joys of this camping trip so far, and that is I have been loaned by a good friend of mine, Randall Graham, his personal 10-inch camp knife that he made. And I am going to do a separate video on this camp knife, but this has been simply extraordinary. I've seen Randall use this both in person at camp as well as on his videos, and what he was capable of doing with this would put most people to shame with multiple knives in their toolkit. And that's what I'm finding as well. This has been my one and only cutting tool for 2 weeks here. I've done all my cutting chores with it, everything from fine carving of spoons with that hard firewood, as well as food preparation, as well as firewood preparation. Now, when I say that, I'm not chopping down large pieces of wood, but after the axe takes the larger pieces of wood into something about as thick as my wrist, and then I'm batoning this, using this to baton with. Randall would tell me I could probably baton, well, I could baton anything that the knife will span, but I haven't put it to that kind of a test, and I don't think I will. Takes and holds an edge like no other knife I own. Now, I will do a separate review on this if you want to learn more about the Randall Graham 10-inch cap knife. All right, we'll put that aside. I do have my Silky Gomboy 240. Haven't used it. Haven't had a need for it. And that's probably because I am in the national park and I can't be cutting any trees or anything. 2 small tools. My Leatherman Juice CS4. If you're interested, I'll do a separate review on this tool, but this has been one of my favorite multi-tools. I do have a Wave and I do have a smaller PS4, but the CS4 in the Juice line has been simply fantastic, and it seems to be a nice balance between the two, one too small and one too big. Downside is it doesn't have locking tools. Upside is it has, besides the traditional pliers of course, and cutting blade, and bottle opener, and screwdriver, it also has a saw and scissors, as well as an awl. So yeah, I'll do, and the other part it has is a corkscrew. So it has a little bit of everything. So I will do a separate review on this, and it's just in a very inexpensive sheath. I've been taking this knife with me to these trips here in Kouchibouguac for a number of years, and this is a knife I was able to purchase very inexpensively from China. Some of you may recognize this. This is the Blade Tech Hunter series. This is their economy line. Rather than using S30V, this one uses 440C steel, and it was outsourced to China, and I was able to find it online and get it at a very inexpensive knife. What a great knife this is. Quite a bit of an untraditional look and design to it, but it has multiple, and I mean multiple, positioning with jimping at 3 places on the spine of the blade. This one does have a very fine serration back here, which does not get in the way. In fact, it's actually quite useful if you want to feather something. It has jimping right here where the guard is, just forward of the guard, so a bit of a choil with jimping. It is a back lock. It has, well, orange, they were a little oranger when I first got it, G10 handles, and I just added a monkey ball lanyard. It has a foam ball in the center, or monkey fist, I guess, lanyard. The idea was that it would be something that if I dropped it over the side of the canoe, it would float. It doesn't, but it is easy to find if I do drop it, and it's more aesthetic than anything else. But this has been a very, very handy knife, and it is the one that goes with me in my shoulder bag when I'm hiking through the woods here or going to the beach. You know, maybe a little whittling, some food preparation. It's just been a handy little knife. So those are my main cutting tools, but I thought I'd also share with you one of the nice pastimes about being here in the national park is the time you just sit around and do nothing. And really, that's what camping can be all about, is just sitting around, enjoying the weather, enjoying being in the woods with no responsibilities, no time commitments. But one of the things I like doing is carving spoons. And I started that here in the park a number of years ago. Just picked up a piece of firewood one day, and I had my very first spoon knife with me, or hook knife, and it was raining, so I sat under the tarp and carved a spoon. Well, that's expanded a little bit, and the hobby's become quite, I don't want to say extensive, but I do enjoy this, so I've added a few tools. Now, nothing custom here, except for the customization I've done to it. This is a Mora double-edged spoon carving knife, and I'll do another video on it. I've done some modifications to it. I've kind of beveled the back of the blade for make it easier for going through wood, and I do have some tape wrapped around it that gives me a little purchase on my thumb so I can carve in both directions. And I just refinished the handle a little bit. It's just a small leather sheath that I made for it to keep it from cutting anything up. Then as time passed, I added 2 more tools to that kit. Another Mora double-edged spoon knife, and this one has a much shallower curve to it, and this has become my primary spoon knife. I find that even though I believed that the other one was be the primary tool I'd use, this may have been intended for the finishing work on a spoon bowl, but I find that that shallow groove does everything I need to do, because you don't need to go in very deep in a spoon, and this takes off just enough wood without leaving too many ridges, and you can bring the ridges down quite nicely with this one. And a Mora carving knife, and this knife has been modified. The handle is it's a different design. I'll post the model numbers for each of these knives on the videos, but those are my 3 carving knives that I have. And just to finish off the carving component of this video, cabinet shaves or wood shaves. They come in a set. You can buy a set of 2 with a sharpening tool. It's actually called a burnishing tool. Lee Valley here in Canada, and these have all but replaced sandpaper for my use. It's the sharp 90-degree edge on these things, and the burnishing tool re-puts that edge. It's a hard carbon steel tip on it, and you can just rub it up and down and put an edge back on it. And this will do most of the shaving and sanding and finishing work necessary for spoons. It's just one of those things that I added to over time. Actually, these are all, pretty much everything I hear has been a Christmas gift or a birthday gift or even a Father's Day gift at one point. The little pouch that I put it in is just made from a piece of nylon, and then I put an assortment of sandpapers ranging from 100 right up to, I think there is 800 here, 320. Yeah, up to right from 40 up to 800 grit sandpaper here, and I can use that for finish the spoons off. And then I usually have some oil with me that I can finish the spoons off if I get to that point here. All right, those are the cutting tools I brought with me. If you're interested in me in doing a more in-depth video or review on any of those, just say so. And now let me show you what I brought for resharpening these tools. So it's great to be away from home for 2 weeks and enjoying the beautiful park that we have here, and I'll give you the name of the park again on screen if you're interested in looking up and maybe coming here someday. And it's great to be able to carry all those assortment of cutting tools. Even though I haven't used most of them, it allows me to play with them when I want to, or to use them when I want to, get more used to tools that I may not carry on a regular basis when I'm out hiking. But after 2 weeks, tools are going to get dull. So how do I go about sharpening them? I don't have my whetstones or anything else that I might use at home, so I have to have a tool kit or a sharpening kit of some type here. Let me show you what I brought. All right, sharpening tools. So this may not be what you're going to expect, but my primary sharpening tool, the one I use most often, is a belt and some polishing compound. So the belt is my strop. Now, I am in need of a new strop. This is something I've used for a long time. Just an old leather belt, heavily charged with polishing compound on both the suede side as well as the smooth side, and I can get an even finer edge using the smooth side after I've stropped on the suede side. And this has been used a little bit too long, and I am due for a new one. But the theory is, if you don't let your tools get dull, then there's no need to sharpen them. So after any use at all, before I put the tool away, I'll get my strop out. If I need to charge a little bit of the compound on it, I'll do that. And then I'll just strop a number of times, equal number of times on both sides of the knife. And it usually brings an already sharp edge back to hair popping sharp. But that won't always be the case. You know, it's possible that you've used the tool longer or for a longer period of time than this will help recover with. Or maybe you've got a nick in it like you might do with an axe if you overstrike and hit the ground. Preparation and being careful with that is the prevention part of it. But, you know, it is possible just the same. So if I do have to sharpen my tools more than that, For my axes, just an axe puck, a medium and a fine side and a small axe puck. And this was purchased through Bushcraft Canada. And Paul at Bushcraft Canada sells these at a very reasonable price. It's not a foul and even or a Lansky, but it's very similar, and it works just fine for my purposes. So I use this quite a bit for sharpening most of my larger edge tools, like my axes, my hatchets, and even my machete and my tomahawks. So it's a good tool for that. And you usually don't have to do much beyond using this to sharpen those, although it is nice to take it just that much further if you have the tools available to you. So my next most often is a DMT Find Diasharp Fine Stone, or Diamond Steel, I guess it is. And this is something I picked up a couple of years ago on eBay, and when I first got it I said, man, I can barely tell the difference between the sharpening side, which is indicated by an arrow, and the non-sharpening side. And that's because it is fine, and this is just amazing for putting that edge on it. So I mentioned that the two tools I've used the most so far have been the axe and the Randall Graham 10-inch camp knife. Well, the tools that I've used for the axe, primarily, I haven't had to do much of anything, but I have put the stone to it once. But the Randall Graham, I can't tell you how heavily I've used that. And in order to keep that sharp, twice now in 2 weeks, I've had to put a bit of an edge back on it. So I'll end with the strop, but before I get to the strop, I've used this, and then in combination with that, a ceramic rod. So those two things have all it's been that's necessary to put an already sharp edge back into hair popping sharp, and I cannot explain. I wish I could demonstrate for you here just how sharp that knife can get. It is just literally hair popping. I think the hairs run away from it when they see it coming. So those two tools have been my primary sharpening for here. Now, they're not the only tools I brought. I haven't had to use them, but I have two pocket water stones. And one is a 1,000 grit and the other one is a 2,000 grit stone. And I could be using those, but I haven't felt the need for them yet. But I do have them if I want to. That would probably be useful if had I been using my XXX Forester, where I would have been able to bring the Scandi or zero grind edge back into shape. But I haven't felt the need to use for these. But I've got the space in my trunk of my car. Why not bring them along? So, how do I go about sharpening those carving tools, the spoon knife and, the spoon knives primarily? Well, this is just a simple made-up little carving kit that starts with a bit of foam, and that'll be a backing for sandpaper. And I have 3 grits of wet-dry sandpaper here, 1,000, 1,500, and 2,500 grit sandpaper. And what I'll do is lay those on the piece of foam. And this works great for the something like a curved edge. So something like a convex edge will sharpen well. And I have brought convex edge knives out in the past, and this is primarily what this is designed for, is a convex edge. But I treat the spoon knives like a convex edge because you don't sharpen the inside of them. You may have to take a wire burr off, but you don't sharpen the inside of the spoon knife. You sharpen the outside. And since it's a continuous sweep, it's very much like a convex is, and I can do a video on sharpening spoon knives at a later date. But so this is my system for my spoon knives and any convex knives I may have with me. Just 3 pieces of sandpaper, wet dry sandpaper, and a piece of foam backing. All right, let's wrap this video up with a few closing words. So as I mentioned in the opening of this video, car camping provides you options in taking tools with you probably wouldn't want to carry as per the weight when you go backpacking. So I was able to bring a variety of tools with me, and even though I haven't used most of them, I don't feel bad about that because the ones I have used, I've used extensively, especially again that Randall Graham 10-inch camp knife. I've put that through a lot of work and have been really impressed with what it's capable of doing. So you do need to have some type of a sharpening kit to go with whatever cutting tools you have. This is just what I have. It works for me, and you see I don't even use most of the tools there. They're very simple and actually quite inexpensive. I'd be interested in knowing what you would take for 2 weeks camping in a national park as far as cutting tools go and sharpening equipment goes. Okay, so if you found this video at all interesting, maybe you'll consider subscribing to my channel. But in the meantime, get out and explore. Take the path less traveled. even if it's in a national park. And I think I will do that. Show you some of the paths and some of the trails here in the national park and what this one has to offer. But until next time, get out and explore, take that path less traveled. I guarantee it'll make all the difference. Bye for now.